Do you know that feeling when, as a little kid, you're driving home from somewhere? Not you specifically, you're driving, but your parents are driving, or grandparents, whatever. You're driving home from somewhere. Maybe it's like a holiday celebration, whatever it may be. You're driving home, and it's late at night, very late, to the point where it's pitch dark out. And you know that feeling where once they turn into that driveway, you immediately wake up and know immediately where you are. You know that feeling of just sitting in the back seat, feeling the bumps in the road from the driving, or just feeling the car moving in general, and you're at a place of ease. You feel the darkness, you feel isolated because there's no talking going on. You're just in the backseat of that car, maybe thinking, maybe listening to music. But that whole feeling, that whole experience that you're encapsulated in, I feel like that experience perfectly coincides with this album. If you've never heard it, that might not make sense to you. And even if you've heard it, that might not make sense to you. So let me try to explain what I'm saying here. This whole album to me feels like the epitome of being alone. You know, the feeling of isolation. This whole album to me feels like you with yourself and your thoughts in the nighttime. All these type of feelings like depravity or just general isolation, moodiness, darkness, not to the point of pure sadness, but just being alone and being awake when no one else is. A sense of sort of eeriness, but more just a sense of being alone. A sense of being awake when the rest of the world is asleep. I feel like that's the kind of feeling that this album captures. It's a truly one-of-a-kind experience, and when you listen to it on those terms, it's really late, 3 to 4 a.m., it's quiet, you know, you're alone, and you just throw this album on, that to me is the perfect experience you can have with this album. And that's why I bring up the car ride thing at the start of the video. Because to me, I have not experienced this, but to me, the perfect feeling I can imagine myself listening to this album is being in the back of a car, whether it's just, you know, you're in an Uber or someone you know is driving, just being in the back of a car. Maybe your eyes are closed, maybe you're thinking of whatever it may be in your own head, or you're just looking out on the side window, maybe it's lightly raining, but you don't see any people around. You see the bright white lights from buildings and the infrastructure, you see the dark cold sidewalks, you see the dark alleys in such a big city, but yet there's no movement, no noise, it's just pure darkness and seclusion. That's the kind of feeling that you can't really, you know, experience quite in, you know, 2025 because, you know, it's impossible. Every city is going to have people out no matter the time. But in a perfect world where you could have that kind of experience, I feel like throwing this album on would be perfect. Obviously, you could try to capture it to the best of your ability where you are in those same kind of standards, but maybe you're just driving on a long highway at night, or maybe through the back roads where there's not a lot of activity. Any circumstance you could find yourself in of those parameters, and you listen to this album, I guarantee you it will be one of the best musical listening experiences that you have. It's also crazy for me to think of me describing the album in this way, because when I first heard it, I was extremely underwhelmed. I feel like a lot of people have the same experience. You hear a lot of these tracks and you're like, they're kind of cool, but they feel a bit one-dimensional and derivative, and you're like, okay, some of these songs are 4 minutes long. They're just overstaying their welcome. A lot of the genres used in these mixes are very crackly and sound very unpolished. A lot of the samples here sound a bit repetitive or maybe somewhat enjoyable to the ears, but you're like, I don't see anything groundbreaking about this or anything that's going to make me want to revisit any of these tracks. Or you just think that the sounds in general are not that interesting compared to a lot of the other electronic music you have infinite access to. That's why contextualization is so important here, and it's something I failed to really properly do during my first listen. This album came out in 2007. a time where when this album came out, things like dubstep were not what they were in this era. The influence this album has in electronic can absolutely not be understated. And the more you listen to this album, at least for me, the more I realized how wrong I was to judge the album so harshly and have these critiques that I had on my first listen. Every single song that I had a problem with on first listen, I love now. I love this whole project now. Anything that I thought was derivative or a boring, uninteresting sound on my ears, now I'm at the point where when I listen to these songs, these samples are so, they're just like ear candy to me that I'm genuinely just annoyed when this song is over because I want to keep hearing it. Everything is so sticky in your ear, it just permanently implants itself in there like an earworm that you just can't dig out. You just want to keep hearing these sounds. The way that this album is so simple, you know, it's on such a bare bone and skeletal music production software. Yet these sounds sound so big and are perfectly capturing a sense of darkness and loneliness, isolation, you know, all the things I said before. It's truly incredible how Burial was able to do this with sampling and the software he was using at the time that he was. Even crazier to think about is that if you aren't aware, this album was made in just a 2-week duration. And you would think like, oh, a lot of these albums that are so influential and have this character to them must have had, you know, an insane amount of time on them, right? But that is absolutely not the case with this album. This thing was pumped out extremely quick and it has insane levels of quality. And the reason I have to give this album so much praise is because when you really think about it, you think that this album is maybe a bit boring or generic or maybe not the most, you know, you feel like a lot of the sounds here aren't doing too much for you. But then listen to any other modern electronic music. Nothing sounds like this. Listen to old electronic music. Nothing really sounds like this. Or even if you do find something that sounds kind of in this lane, none of the sounds that were made on this album are replicated with near as much precision or quality to them, or get even close to capturing the same feeling that you get from this album. And the reason I know that this album is so good and so important to me is because, you know, there's a lot of music that you can listen to and you're like, that's great music. Even 10 out of 10 albums or near 10 out of 10 albums you can listen to and you're like, these albums are great, but they still might not provoke a vast amount of emotion or reflection or just genuine awe when you hear them. This album genuinely captures scenes that I never could have thought of with music, and it just makes me feel a way when listening to it that I didn't think I would feel, especially with this type of electronic music, which, like I said, feels like it's doing so little, but at the same time is doing so much. Now, I don't really want to do too much of a sample breakdown or go into the extreme technicalities of a great majority of the tracks on this album because I feel like the video would be too overly long, and because these sample breakdowns already exist, so I'll probably just link them in the description below if you want to see them. Instead, I'll just kind of briefly go over what I think are the highlights of the album, even though there's no low points, but I'm going to take those tracks that I think are by far the best and just kind of say what about them is so good to me. Take the song Archangel, for example. The way that Burial uses this Ray J sample is incredible. The way that he chops it up and combines it with this Harry Gregson instrumental is pitch shifted in a way where you can't even distinguish that it's Ray J. And combined with this eerie instrumental, it just feels like a man struggling in isolation. He just keeps saying that he is alone and he feels alone, but he just doesn't want to be alone, and he's missing this person that he can't get back to. Burial is able to combine this all together in a way where you would think this is the original narrative of the song when it's not, which is just a complete telltale example of why he's such a great producer. That little crackle also is just implanted in my brain now. It's such a nice little thing to hear after each refrain. Next, take the song Near Dark, which is a top 3 on the album for me. Burial takes an Usher song, and he shifts the pitch in a way where it sounds like a woman saying this refrain, but it's not. You wouldn't have been able to even tell that it's Usher. I don't know what it is, man, because it's not really that crazy, but the way that he just repeats this, I can't take my eyes off you, it's just addicting to the ears. It sounds like someone just hyper fixating over a romantic partner or someone that they're crushing over, if you will. This drum pattern also is just absolutely addicting and complements the sample perfectly. Like I said, throughout the whole listen, never gets boring. I just love hearing it the whole time. And then the background sounds, I don't even know how I really would describe it, but to me it just sounds like the coldness of being in the dark. It just feels like you're walking out in the dark and you just feel that cold air. And then obviously every now and then you hear those little I envy you. The way that these three things just all pair together, it just creates a dark, mysterious track that's just, like I said, absolutely addicting to listen to. Next, the song Ghost Hardware. This is another top 3 for me easily. The way that he laces in Christina Aguilera vocals on this track, they sound so subtle yet so prominent at the same time. The way he loops them in is just genuinely amazing. Obviously it has that very classic clickety-clackety drum pattern that sounds great the way it's looped throughout. And then the next sound, I don't really know how to even describe this sound. I don't know what the sample is, so I'm just gonna have to like play it here. That sound, the way it just plays throughout the whole track, it just sounds absolutely beautiful. It's probably one of the best, like, just clear-cut sounds throughout the whole album. That is the most addicting part of the track for me, by far. And then, once again, the way this instrumental plays in the background, it just sounds very... I can't stop saying dark and isolated and cold and atmospheric, but that is literally just how all these tracks sound. It's one of those things where it's genuinely just hard to describe. You just have to listen to it and then understand kind of what I'm saying, because I genuinely don't know how to put it into words. I really don't. And then the last track I want to talk about is going to be Homeless. It's a bit of a deeper cut. This track features those exact same Christina Aguilera vocals from Ghost Hardware, just different parts of the performance. He rips these vocals from a cover of a Dondria Nicole song from like 2006 on, it's a YouTube rip. Very random, but the way he puts them in here, they flow very nice. You kind of don't even notice they're there. They're synced in pretty well, but once you hear them, you're like, oh, now they're super blatant. And then he has these like pitched refrains in the back that just keep hitting over and over throughout the track with this spacey instrumental again that, like I said, you know what I'm going to say. Every song, you know what I'm going to say. I don't even need to say it, because you know what I'm going to say. Cold and isolated. Dark and isolated. And that is exactly why, at the start of the video, I created that visual illustration for you, because this album truly just feels like what I said. And I think it's still, somehow, even after 18 years of being out, is still criminally underrated, so underappreciated, and I feel like the reason for that is because this thing doesn't have that many streams. Like, a lot of people aren't listening to it that much. I guess in the modern era, people just kind of know its significance. And because there's probably a lot of people that were like me and they listened to this one time and were like, it's just whatever. But I'm telling you, if you've listened to this and you didn't like it, you need to go back to it. Or if you've never heard of this and my depictions of the songs somehow intrigued you, or my illustration somehow intrigued you, you need to listen to this, because I'm promising you this will be one of the greatest musical experiences you will have once you really let it simmer and truly appreciate the intricacies that went into this album. And that is why I still think after all these years this thing is not appreciated enough and will go down as one of the best electronic albums ever created. It just simply has everything. Perfect execution of sample flips, infectious ear candy like drum patterns and production, depicting such a vivid but yet clear sight of emotion, and just genuinely transporting you to a place where you really feel. Because that is, at the end of the day, what the best music does. It makes you feel. As cringy or cliche, whatever you want to call it as it is, that's really what it boils down to. And the way this album makes me feel is truly like no other album. Not to say that like no other albums, provoke strong feelings and emotions, but the feelings I get from this specific one, I haven't found anything that really does it the same way. The only album that's ever really made me feel this kind of way with like the dark, mysterious, whatever atmosphere I've been depicting the whole time is like Kid A. And that's another amazing album, but that's a whole nother story. Do yourself a favor, listen to this album if you haven't, and truly just understand what was the genius of Burial and how this album is still underappreciated 18 years later. Criminally underappreciated, I would say. And when I say was in past tense, I don't mean like that he's died now and isn't here anymore. At least to public knowledge. I don't really know. He likes to keep it pretty low profile. Not many people really know much about him. He just doesn't really make music anymore, unfortunately.